For those of you who have been following the news, you would have seen that earlier this week, I went to two regions, regions 5 and 6, and I was accompanied by Minister Ashni Singh and Minister Wanenjil. The primary purpose of that visit was to engage with the contractors who work in that region, or those regions, and also with the regional administration, to first of all outline our policies, to speak about some of the transgressions that we observe have been taking place in those regions and in many other regions, and to say to them that these would not be tolerated. Now that we have made that clear to both the regional administrations in these two regions and the contractors, we intend to follow this up with technical teams to the two regions to ensure that what we spoke of would be faithfully observed, and secondly, that people are going to be trained similar to what we offered in Essequibo Coast, so that they don't have any excuse of ignorance about the procurement laws of the country in the execution of their duties. The message was similar to what we delivered on the Essequibo Coast, which is that that we want to, as far as possible, ensure that the procurement opportunities of the region remain in those regions so that we can build capacity with regional contractors, as we have done right across Guyana, particularly for the small projects. And that we expect that the procurement process must be transparent and lawful, meaning that it must be in full compliance with the Procurement Act. We also made it clear that we are aware that some people are thwarting the goal of the government, which is to ensure that we have many new contractors and to allow them to work so that we can incubate a new set of contractors and share the vast opportunities now unfolding to as many people as possible. They're doing that by identifying or incorporating multiple companies and bidding on projects, so that when the contract awards are made, sometimes in a single household, you could have several contracts being awarded, and that defeats the purpose. Not that it's illegal in itself, but it defeats the purpose of what we are trying to achieve. And so we are going to prohibit this. We've made it clear that government agencies and government officials, particularly if they're in positions of influence to steer the contracts, that they must, first of all, declare their interests, and secondly, they must not participate in the bidding process if they're in some positions where they're directly involved in the adjudication and award of the bids. And for other government officials who are in the region but maybe not related to the process, who may have companies or may have their family, their own companies, then these two have to declare their interests. Because often people in the villages and the wards in the cities and maybe the towns, they see these individuals getting contracts are their family members, and they believe that they would have influenced the outcome of the award. And this is a problem. We pointed out about shoddy work, not building according to the specification by contractors, that we intend to put in place liquidating damages, that we will start blacklisting people for not doing their work on time or doing it bad work, not completing projects. So I've outlined this before, and I think it was widely reported about what was said at the meeting. So it's not anything new. The message is the same right across the country, but ensuring that we have more people. What you will observe that you would not have observed in 2020 is that in the rooms in the regions, the two regions, you had large numbers of contractors, maybe combined about 700 contractors in those two regions alone who attended the meeting, and many of them get small work. If you had done that, if you had gone to a similar meeting, if APNU had dared to hold a meeting and speak openly about the fraud that took place in their time, of course, they didn't do that, and they would have never done it like we're doing now, you would have seen just a small smattering of people, just a small amount of people, and many of them politically connected people. Like in Berbice, I remember the same thing, the concerns about one of the AFC members, Derek Jagdeo, being given a large contract to weed the whole region. That contract now, if it's given out, would probably be split into maybe 15 different contracts, so that many small contractors can benefit from it, the weeding and cleaning of parapets. But one man got a contract for 160 million to do the whole of Berbice, weeding the shoulders of the road. I think that was it. So a totally different approach, and large numbers of people, but smaller people. And we spoke about the need to go to rates too, so people work for rates. It avoids the bidding process. We pointed out that we had removed the bid security bond to get new contractors to start bidding up to $15 million. And this has led to a large number of contractors doing this. We're working with them to even out and to smooth the process through which they get their NIS compliances, etc. So we spoke of all of this at the meeting there, and I expect that more people now would continue to benefit from the award of contracts. If you look at the audience too, you will see a mixed group of people, Guyanese of every race, who are benefiting from this approach by the PPP government. And I dare say even for Afro-Guyanese contractors, in Berbice you have maybe 1,000% more than you had on the APNU in Berbice and the two regions. So what we had intended is working. Now, often when I speak here, we tend to focus a lot on what's happening around the city or in Region 4 or Region 3, because we live here, we're based here. And we don't speak often to the people in Berbice and other regions about what's taking place in their communities. And because in every region, we have a plan for the development of that region. In Region 10, we have a plan for the development of that region that encompasses almost every sector. So too in Region 6. So today, I just want to remind people that apart from what we have done to breathe life back into that region, because that region was dying under APNU. It was dying because they sent home over 4,000 sugar workers from Berbice alone, and 7,000 across the country. And sugar was the biggest source of disposable income. So if you remove the biggest source of disposable income, it affected everything else. People who have shops in New Amsterdam, or the vendors, or the market people, or the taxi drivers, the hairdressers, everyone. Disposable income was cut significantly in Berbice, and that is why it was practically dying. There was malaise. Every time I visited that county in opposition, you heard of the woes. People were looking for jobs. They couldn't find jobs. People were complaining. We saw truancy increased again. People were dropping out of school. People couldn't afford to send their kids to school because they just lost their job. There was no social safety net. They were not getting any help from the government. And on top of that, the cost of living was going up because of higher taxes. Higher taxes on water, electricity, data, all of that stuff. So that was the happening in Berbice. Today, it is a very different place. If you go there, you have labor shortages. People complain about labor shortages. One fisherman got up at the meeting that I was there and he said, I want to talk about the fishing industry. And it was at a meeting with the contractors. And he said, the government is not paying enough attention to this. I can't find laborers now to work. So he is complaining that he can't find people to work in the industry anymore. We met with some poultry producers. One guy who was the largest poultry producer in Berbice, he said, I had 500 staff. I can't find people now to work on my farm. I brought people, I brought some Amerindians to work there. I brought people from other regions to work, and then they move on to higher paying jobs in the region. I've lost all my labor now. So he is now going out of production because of scarcity of labor in a region that had massive, massive unemployment. More women are working. You have over 4,000 women working through the part-time job. We have had more people employed back at Gaisuko. On the private development alone, the housing program, you have thousands of others who are working. So it is a different place today. They're working, they're earning more disposable income in that region, unlike what took place under APNU. We're making significant investments in the region. We've just awarded two contracts, four-lane road from New Amsterdam all the way to Molson Creek. There are 3 lots. 2 lots have been awarded at the cost of about $400 million. But that road will change Berbice too. And as I was explaining at the meeting, even wherever we put the Deepwater Harbor now, because there are some issues now with the mouth of the river, too much sedimentation. So we're looking now at a causeway proposal, which you'd build out into the Atlantic to the deep so that we don't have to have dredging costs. So now that road, the 4-lane road, would be crucial to moving goods and services along that corridor, the whole Berbice corridor. And we believe that there'd be more migration of the oil and gas industry to that region. Maybe if the large second monetization of gas project comes on shore, it will come on shore in Berbice, because that's the that's the ideal location, given that more of our gas finds have been in the Haimar area and Pluma. So we believe that the road is critical there. We're putting in more solar power now, like we're going to do in Essequibo and in Linden. We already have the contract out for, I think it's about over 10 megawatts of solar power in Berbice. We're going to upgrade the transmission main from, which we haven't gone out to, from Georgetown, from the control center all the way to Berbice, so that we can move a lot of the power or more of the power more reliably to that part of the country once the gas to energy project comes on stream. As you know, we're building the Guyana Technical Training College at Port Morant. That's a massive construction. We have 2 programs that would be housed in that, the Oil and Gas Training Institute and the Hospitality Institute, because we need to train about 3,000 people to work in the hotels that are going to start coming on stream next year. Right here in Region 4, it will be done there. 24 persons who are already trained. They're already working in the oil and gas sector, and we'll have hundreds more trained there. That was started. You know, we're building two hospitals, one at number 75 for 30 million US, and another one in New Amsterdam for 160 million US dollars, both major hospitals that would transform healthcare in Berbice. We built 2 call centers, one at Palmyra that's already started working, and they've employed 85 persons there, and then another one at number 75, the other end. There's a stadium being built there. Albion is being upgraded to play international cricket. We've spent $471 million in 62 facilities of the 125 grounds across the country. This year we've assigned another $400 million to continue the work. That would be all the grounds in Berbice, including all the grounds in New Amsterdam, right across Berbice. The football, cricket grounds, we're working now on expanding sports there. We're looking at doing 15 new cokers. They're building 2 Hope-like canals in Berbice, and 2 north to south canals at number 51, 52, and the Lancaster Wemy area that would, and with a southern embankment and internal drains that would help to alleviate flooding in that area by managing the waters coming from the backlands, similar to the Hope Canal, and would bring relief to thousands of farmers in those areas and bring more lands into productive use. These are just some of the things. I can go on to talk about the Berbice plan, and this is all happening now, apart from the move to get better, the core things, more jobs, better health care, better quality education, changing people's lives there. We're still going to do that bridge across the Berbice River, similar to the one that we're doing here in Demerara, a fixed high structure bridge that would allow the use of the river by vessels going under with no need for them to open, and that's on the card. So I just wanted to draw some attention back to some of the things that are happening there in Berbice, because sometimes we don't talk enough about what happens in the regions. And then you get accusations that, oh, we only focus on Region 4 and we're only doing things in Georgetown or the East Bank or in Region 3. But our plans cater for the entire country. In the past, week or so, just since my last press conference, and I notice now that both the AFC and the APNU, they go on Fridays. So they have a whole week of telling their lies before I return. And so I'm thinking about maybe on the Saturday night doing a half-an-hour program to deal with the lies that they tell on their Friday press conferences, because they've done that to avoid me. I used to get an opportunity to comment on what they say, but now they're doing that to avoid me so that they can continue to peddle for a whole week the lies that they tell there. And so maybe I'm thinking about it. I haven't decided as yet whether that will happen, but that will be more of maybe an interview type, not the press conference again. But I've had to take a whole week to, and in fact it might have been good, to show how shallow an opposition that we have. And sometimes I don't know whether people are serious in this country or the newspapers take them seriously. In fact, they don't point out the duplicity of their positions. We have had an opposition that has been saying, oh, they will manage Guyana without any inflation, no increase in costs, which is a rework of international economics. It's impossible. No country has ever done that in the world, but the big brains in the PNC and AFC believe that they can defy the whole world. Every economist, they have a foolproof plan to manage Guyana without any inflation. Secondly, their position belie what happened in the period when they were in office. In the last 5 years, without global inflationary pressures, with a low price of gas, oil and gas globally, and without COVID or any other upward pressures, without any increase in freight costs, inflation rate was higher than it is now, because it was driven by taxes. So they ignore their own track record completely. And they've been pillaring the government, saying, oh, we're insensitive to cost of living increases, and therefore we're not concerned about people's welfare. Last week I pointed out, and maybe they themselves did not understand or did not know about the magnitude and the scope of the government's intervention to tackle the cost of living crisis, the global cost of living crisis. And I've pointed out in a comparative sense how we have fared with our peers, and compared to our peers, and compared even to the United States of America, the largest economy in the world. I used 4 metrics that have seen major changes in the US. Utility prices, electricity, water, transport prices, and the cost of mortgages, and therefore housing costs. And I've pointed out that in each instance we have either kept the rates at the pre-2020 levels in spite of all the international pressures, or we have lowered them. Like we have lowered mortgage rates and we have lowered the cost of water. So when they understood the scale of the intervention and how much it cost us, how much taxes are foregone, like in the case of the the removal of the 50% tax costing $81 billion. And that each person now, when they go to the pump, they get a subsidy, a tax-related subsidy of about $500 per gallon, whether you buy diesel or gas. And when I pointed out that we're spending, because to offset the increase only in fuel prices to GPL, over $66 million, nearly $70 million now. Norton came out immediately and said, oh, that's bad management. In the Demerara Wave story, we'll remove all these subsidies. So if you don't have the subsidies, this is the man who was complaining about cost of living. If we didn't have the fuel subsidy to GPL, the rate for electricity will go from 22 cents per kilowatt hour, which is about $44, 40-something dollars, to 30 cents per kilowatt hour, 60-something dollars per kilowatt hour. It means your electricity bill would have gone up by 1/3. But he wants that removed, the subsidy. This is the same man who was complaining a week ago, and the same party that was complaining a week ago about the government not doing enough to alleviate cost of living. But once that removed, so your electricity bill will go up by 1/3. He wants us to put back the taxes on fuel, so that every time you go to the pump and you buy a gallon of gasoline, you have to pay $500 more per gallon. He said, we'll remove the subsidy, because that's basically bad management by the PPP. And he was complaining about cost of living increases. Now, if we do that, not just electricity prices will go up, or transport prices will go up, but water prices will have to go up too. He wants to remove the subsidy from water because they have to buy electricity at a higher rate. And if you don't subsidize them, your water rates will go up too. This is the sort of party that we have. They make policy on the run. They also are not committed to helping people. In fact, his first instinct was, if they remove these things, if they remove the subsidies, then the people's cost of living will go up higher, and then I can then criticize the government for it again. So let me advocate for removing all of the subsidies. Now, when they realize a few days later that it was going down badly, and that we pointed out that the removal of the subsidy would cause increased pain or a massive increase in cost of living for our people, what did they do? They quietly said, oh, we will keep the subsidy in place now, but we'll make the places more efficient in the future. They had to walk back their position when we exposed it. But the first instinct is often the correct one. This is what happened in the last week between the press conferences. We had a political opposition that had been arguing for 6 months about cost of living increases for over a year now, and now wants us to increase the cost of living by removing all of the things we are doing to help people to abate the cost of living. That's the first point that we've had, and this took place in the last week. The same political party, which is a major political party now in the country, doesn't do its research. It operates like a cake shop. It's led by its nose. it, it picks up snippets of rumors and convert these into policy positions, and then would almost take public, embarrassingly so, take public positions on the basis of garnered rumors. So on the 16th of July, Rickford Burke posted that the Commissioner of Police was renting a piece of land at Swan to the police force for millions of dollars to put derelict vehicles. APNU picked that up. On the 22nd of July, they issued a statement on it, repeating basically the same lies. Then on the 24th of July, they reissued the press release and put aerial shots now of the area where the derelict vehicles are parked. Then yesterday we found out that one, that Robeson Ben had identified this area to park, to put the derelicts before APNU got into office. Patterson said he fenced the area and it belongs to the government of Guyana, and that's where the derelicts are parked. Patterson said that. The plot of land there belongs to the government of Guyana, and embarrassingly so, under APNU, they fenced it and they started putting the derelict vehicles there. But in their eagerness to point out about corruption, perceived corruption, they would elevate any rumor to fact. And this happens on a daily basis. On a daily basis. Every rumor now becomes a fact for APNU, as we just saw, and they issue two-party press releases on the rumor. And they didn't even know that if they had just had the decency to call around to find out that this was a facility that they themselves used and that it belonged to the government of Guyana. So trust me, every day we see this. Every rumor that they hear, they would elevate it into a fact. Now I've seen them calling for an investigation into the Perima airstrip. Now, the ministry made it clear that several of these areas, the airstrips, literally tens of them have been upgraded under the PPP and are in full use and have done quality work. They pointed out to the difficulties in this area. But the contract liability period had not expired. And if a contract is not done to a certain standard, then the defect liability period, then the contractor has to fix it if he does shoddy work. But it's difficult to construct in these areas. So they wanted to see what feasibility study was done there and who designed it and all of that. Now, for an airstrip in the hinterland, you ask them who did any feasibility study for the $1.6 billion that they spent on that Durban Park project that's now converted into the Lover's Lane. People go there at night now to do all sorts of things. So the place is a derelict. To ask them who did the feasibility study and how come $600 million from the audit report that was done is still missing on the project. They can't give account for $600 million. But they want to go, they would ignore all the airstrips that we have done across the country, all of the work on upgrading community infrastructure in these hinterland areas, and say, oh, this one was done badly. It was done badly, and the ministry has already been addressing it. It was done badly, and they already are affecting it, addressing it, because it's part of the defect liability period, and it has to be fixed. So this is going to happen with regularity. Taking rumors, embarrassing themselves. But they have no shame, because Norton is never going to admit that his party issued 2 press releases on the basis of fake news and rumors. Going to find some other way of hiding from this issue. As I said before, the past week, there are many things I have to address. So, our dear friend Nigel Hughes. So I saw the Kite Shore News said, is it conflict of interest, or again that we are afraid of Nigel Hughes? So suddenly this great the Kite Shore News, the conscience of the country in relation to the oil and gas sector, they could, who every week writes about who is in the pocket of ExxonMobil, who talks about them running the country, ExxonMobil running the country. Now suddenly, they're not worried about Nigel Hughes working for the company on their payroll and heading a political party that is represented in the National Assembly, that votes on issues that relate to the management of the industry. They're not concerned about that because they hate the PPP more than they hate ExxonMobil. And that is the clear thing. So they think we're afraid of the Nigel Hughes. But the more, in fact, I am personally happy that he has come to the fore and he takes more public positions now on matters, because he's a very dodgy character, and he would make a statement and then retreat. So you remember 34 is the majority of 65, and then retreats from it all and let APNU pursue it. But he would understand now. In fact, he will find that the political or public arena is vastly different than the control environment of a courtroom. And that the yes-no answers that you often solicit and you confine people who are in the witness boxes to, you're not going to have that in a political arena. So when you say something now, every single person here now has a view to express, every Guyanese, and they will differ, and they can differ in a very robust manner. So you can't control what they say anymore. Now, Nigel Hughes has made a number of statements in the past week. So first of all, I believe that these positions reflect, and I'm going to demonstrate about how shallow the AFC is policy-wise. They have absolutely no policy. So Nigel Hughes read an editorial in the Starbuck News, and the editorial spoke about, I think it's about short-termism. Political short-termism and the PPP civic government. So let's first of all deal with the editorial, because Starbuck speaks about some chief economists of the Inter-American Development Bank commenting on political short-termism in Latin America and the Caribbean, and try to apply that to Guyana. Basically saying exactly what we said 20 years ago, that we needed a national development strategy to look past, and long-term plans to look past political cycles. And that we are not going to be caught up with only winning elections, doing the politically popular things to win elections, that we have a long-term plan that looks at transformation of the country and is sustainable. And I'll demonstrate that in a moment. So this gentleman didn't say much except that Latin America has suffered because of political short-termism, and that you needed in Latin America an independent institution that will make all the policy decisions, not elected one, so that they don't have to account to people, but will make policy decisions and basically implement them. So I would ask the Starbuck News to consider a couple of things. That if they were examining the biggest loss of welfare in Latin America and the Caribbean, it came about not, in most countries, not because of domestic actions by many of these countries, particularly over the past 30 years. It was because institutions like the Inter-American Development Bank, that this chief economist works with, and the other IFIs, that they pushed a lot of these countries into structural adjustment programs, and they had an ideological approach to it, which is pushing the Washington consensus or neoliberalism. And that it was the wanton, the wholesale implementation of the ideological views of these institutions, the Washington consensus, that led to the biggest loss of welfare and the destruction of many economies in this region. If you look at, I don't want to go down history, but they were the ones who were treating Argentina when Argentina moved to dollarization, that it did the greatest thing ever. They paraded the finance minister, Cavallo, at that time. I was in the Ministry of Finance, paraded him. He was talking everywhere about this was the approach to solving all of Latin America's problem. Until today, Argentina has now recovered from the devastation of what that wrought on the country. But it was starkly reflected right across the region. And so the biggest threat to welfare came from that. The biggest threat to welfare came from what happened at the WTO to the Caribbean and the loss of preferences in Europe when we lost the our preferential markets for banana, for sugar. It practically wiped out some of the banana industry in the Caribbean that employed maybe more than 50% of the people in many of the small islands in the past. And the sugar industry, because of the loss of preference, we lost $40 million per year in prices reduction. And those preferences were hard on, and they were fought for, some of them since the GATT days, before the GATT was converted into the WTO. If you look at the uneven application of the OECD rules on money laundering jurisdictions, you would see that that led to the wiping out of some of the financial sector in many Caribbean countries. So they lost energy, welfare, they lost economic output from decisions external to those countries, not because of bad policies in the Caribbean, in many of the countries. It's because of that global environment that is unsympathetic to the developing world, and that we have fought for unsuccessfully to maintain it because of the big push by the developed world to so-called even the playing field. But in evening the playing field, they've distorted all the development tools, or remove all the development tools that small countries had. That is what happened in many of these countries. So he spoke about the need to have long-term development. Well, no, he didn't say that basically. Independent institutions. So, having concluded all of this short-termism, guess what this Tabrook News concludes? And I don't even want to end the debate there, because I can go to prove that a lot that this gentleman spoke about is garbage. Garbage, pure garbage, because it doesn't take the context in which we are operating into account. Not to say that there were not bad policies in many countries. So, having said that, this is what they said. These are all forward-thinking and sensible strategies. Each week one can see the results of political short-termism here under the PPP civic government, trying to force projects through with the sole intent of strengthening their hand for the 2025 elections and without consideration of the consequences. So that was the whole point about quoting this man, to say PPP deals with short-termism and only does projects only to win elections. So Nigel used, in a very erudite fashion, but a very shallow way, he quoted the element of the article and then says, this is precisely what the AFC called for at their national conference on the 29th of June 2024. 10 to 15-year plans, etc., agreed on by all political parties. A national plan which transcends political cycles and political parties We also need a state planning commission. So people said, oh, Nigel Lewis is calling for this very lofty thing. And this is what we need to change Guyana's fortune, this national development plan. So one wonders what happened before. And in 2011, when they were contesting the elections, APNU and AFC, they said they had a national development plan. At that time, we never saw it. They said it, they campaigned on it by just talking about popular things. Oh, we'll pay more, their national plan, a good life for everyone. We will double old age pension in 100 days. We'll remove all the taxes for minors and everyone. We'll have a democracy dividend. In 2015 again, they had a manifesto. I don't see where is this national plan. What were they talking about for 10 years? And if you want to come to the table to discuss a national development plan, where are your plans now? Or do you want, because you can't produce one, and I believe that's the case, you want to adopt plans that are produced by other political parties? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you should be honest to say that. Right now, the AFC has no national plan. They have no ideas about crafting one. They don't have any intention of crafting any plan in the future, but they want us to sit and work on crafting a national plan. There is a plan. There is already an extensive plan that we have worked on. If you ask me today, I can tell you what our plans are for health sector development in Guyana. I've outlined 12 new hospitals, 3,000 new staff to be trained. We are upgrading management with the help of Mount Sinai. We are rehabilitating all the other hospitals. We are working on a national electronic patient management system. We're training more hospital administrators. We intend to redefine primary health care. Tertiary care we will do jointly with private institutions. We have laid it out. It has a geographic expression as well as a quality expression. We have outlined the plan, the objective, and the deliverables. What do you hear from APNU? What does Nigel Lewis have? You should talk about your plan first. If you want to come to the table, you either say, I'm adopting the PPP plan, or I believe the PPP has a plan, and let's improve it a bit. We don't have any. But don't come to the table to pretend as though you're bringing any great intellectual bearing to the issue. You're just talking things about, people love to hear that. Oh, in abstract, let's craft a plan. And the plan would solve all of Guyana's problem. You have many years to do this. Your party that's been in existence for 15 years. Don't tell me you don't know what you want to do in health. Let's talk about another sector. Let's talk about infrastructure plan. We have an infrastructure plan for territorial integration and integrity, that is coordination. We've laid out it comes with a series of infrastructure, starting from our most southern border with Brazil, all the way up to the border to Suriname, and also right down to the Essequibo coast. It focuses on hinterland infrastructure. Roads, bridges. Last week I spoke about that. I spoke about it. An upgrade of all of our highways, the international highways that would allow growth. We've laid this out. We have an energy plan. What is your infrastructure plan for roads and bridges? You complain about one bridge the PPP is building, but where is your plan for this? You built a bridge in Morocco that's crumbling. Where is your plan for highways and for the bridges so that we can drive our people, can drive containers and throw the country without being stuck on the road in traffic jams that last 5-10 hours or whatever, and that they can move around this country to do their business easily? We have a plan for that. We've laid it out. We've laid out our energy plan to supply power. So you are against the Amila, you're against the gas to energy project, you didn't invest in fossil fuel project, but you talk about energy all day. What's your plan? APNO has never defined it. We said, first, it is the gas to energy project, upgrading transmission mains. It is working on solar, 35 megawatts of solar and increasing solar power. That we are going to go back to the hydropower to have a broad energy mix that we may have to even start considering as soon as we finish here another big project of similar nature to generate more power from gas because of the growth in demand. We've laid out, I can go on, we've laid out a plan for the isolated communities. We're taking electricity to every home by distributing a solar panel. What's your plan? It's going to be abstract. Let's get together and do a plan, all the political parties. That's what this country needs. He wants a cover for the intellectual bankruptcy of that party. He wants a cover. They have nothing to offer. Let him talk about what he has to offer in details, not just, oh, we need to craft a plan together. I can lay out all of our plans. ICT, Cathy Hughes had the major role to play. It started off with the liberalization of telecoms. We drafted the law. Remember, they privatized the telecoms in Guyana corruptly, no public tender, and then they gave a 40 years monopoly to the company. We sought to end the monopoly. We brought in Judicial through a loophole in the agreement because it didn't cover cellular, and then we drafted the law to end the monopoly. They came into office, the law was prepared. They passed the law, never liberalized telecommunications. In fact, they put a tax on data. And this was Cathy Hughes now in charge, the wife of Nigel Hughes. What has happened? Soon we got back into office, we liberalized the sector. We are giving more permissions to land more fiber optic cables. We left $17.2 million US earned from the LCDS for them to do the hubs. Cathy Hughes was busy going on opening hubs using money from the LCDS that they approached. But of course, didn't do much there. So what's your plan? We've laid it out. We're encouraging broadband technology right across this country. Access. Look at how many people now in the past 4 years have had access to cheaper bandwidth and cheaper telecom costs and more speed. That means more data access. What's your plan for telecoms? Zero. So we need to get together and do a development plan. So we must all do that because to cover their bankruptcy. I can go on and on this matter. This is when a political party has nothing to offer. But it sounds great. Oh, we must not focus on short-termism. We must focus on long-term plans. Let's all get together. That's what this country really needs. All of us getting together and crafting a plan. And then his colleagues at the Starbuck News says the same thing, that we're only doing these projects to win elections. But they will not say that no other political party has no plan. We've laid out, we're the only political party that has laid out a plan. Look at all these. These are documents that are from the past, and I have not even printed out the National Development Strategy, which is in 6 or 7 volumes with a synthesis volume. I've not printed those out. That would be bigger than this. That's the stack. Look, if you have a chance, look at that, the big stack there. You ask the APNU what one document that they have produced that's not generated by an international organization. These are all done through local efforts, led by the PPP. I have one of it here where in the 90s, even Desmond Hoyt was with us. I'm going through this stuff and I saw with Dr. Jagan and myself and Desmond Hoyt sitting down. Exact same thing we said in the 90s, that let's get together and work on the National Development Strategy. APNU undermined it. We got civil society involved. We produced a massive document in the past. And over the years, we have done several strategies. The latest is the LCDS. Ask them for their strategy on climate. They took money that we left, money from the LCDS that they opposed, and paid for the development of a green state strategy that's practically useless, done by external consultants and organizations. Nothing indigenously developed. We have laid out a low carbon development strategy, earned $750 million now, already in these short years, although 2 years was affected by COVID. In 4 years, earned or signed an agreement for $750 million. Already has $120 odd million coming in to be injected into developing for resilience and adaptation, funding adaptation. Where is their adaptation plan? We have an adaptation plan. I can lay it out for you for climate resilience. Where is their adaptation plan? Zero. And this very same plan, the funding, the LCDS, I told you already, 242 Amerindian villages in the first tranche of resources got 811 projects funded from them. They got their colleagues in the APA trying to sabotage the funding there because they know that those projects are changing lives in the Amerindian communities. This year is another tranche for these communities will get. That's our plan. We not only conceptualize, develop the plans, we have executed the plans, and they're bringing benefits to thousands of Guyanese across the country. Imagine the adaptation measures I just told. We'd have thousands of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres of land becoming arable and farmers benefiting, the Amerindians benefiting. All of us here in Georgetown, etc., will benefit too from ability to manage water better. That's our plan. Where is APNU? So Starbuck News should be shameless to say that the PPP operates on the basis of short-termism. We have laid out all of our plans in these areas. We laid them out in our manifesto. And we have no apology for implementing what we laid out. We said we'd get cheaper electricity. And we are laying out a plan for cheaper electricity. We're rolling it out. We said we want better world-class health care, and we are doing that. We said we want to train more people, and we have 50,000 people on scholarships. And we're doing that. So so we're building new highways. We wanted to liberalize telecommunication. We're implementing what we said to the people. You're calling that short-termism. And then our opponents have nothing, absolutely nothing. They made a mess of Guyana in the past and again in the 5 years. And I will tell you the same Starbuck News story. I'll tell you how much of a mess they made. And you're accusing us of short-termism? We are the only party that's laid out plans that go beyond election cycles, that look to the long term. And so Nigel Hughes wants us to get together to develop a plan. It's hunky-dory, let's all sit in a room. He brings nothing to the table. They have nothing. But they want a cover because they can't produce a national plan. Look at their position on oil and gas. Every week it changes. They don't even have a plan on the oil and gas industry, and they made the biggest mess by signing that lopsided agreement. So he doesn't have a plan, but guess what? Guess what? He wants us to share out the money now, all money. So you don't have a plan to produce wealth as yet. How do you produce wealth in the long run? The same thing they're complaining about, the short-termism. But he says, oh, this oil money, we must distribute it by law. Give every Guyanese citizen some money. So this is another post that he made. A long one now. So I suspect his employers at Exxon gave him this document to say how much money Guyana is earning every hour from our royalty and taxes. So he wants us, he calculated on that basis, they calculated how much we'll earn this year. And he wants us to give it out. We haven't earned it as yet for this year, but he wants us to give it out. We're only halfway in the year, but he wants us to spend this money. That's the first thing. And I suspect the same thing that Exxon probably might have been trying to do when they had one of their propagandists come and talk about, present this information and talk about our budget as though they were funding the full budget for Guyana. The $1.1 trillion was all funded by Exxon revenue. And we had to point out that all of the revenue we collect from Exxon can only fund less than 30% of the budget. This point gets lost on Nigel Hughes. But in his eagerness to please ExxonMobil, he repeats how much money we are earning per hour from Exxon. What he didn't do, he didn't calculate how much money we're spending per hour. And let's look at, so he says, who is getting this money? Calculated is who is getting this money. So let me give you an idea of who is getting the money, Nigel Hughes. Because this is not the courtroom where he believed he could make a statement and get away from it. Now you have to justify your ignorance here, or lack of knowledge. So let me tell him. The budget for the health sector in this year is $129 billion. The budget for education, $135 billion. And the budget, the increase in wages and salaries from 2020 to now has gone up by $90 billion. So just let's take the $90 billion more. Don't take the past, how much we're spending on wages. Just the increase for the past 4 years. Guess how much? That's $354 billion in this year's budget. Guess how much we're collecting from oil in the budget? $300 billion. So you want to know where the money is going? 3 expenditures alone on education, healthcare, and the growth, only the growth in wages and salaries in the public sector, not the full public sector wage bill, which runs to $200 billion, but only the growth in it is $354 billion more than the oil money than we're receiving. So did he do the calculation how much more we're spending per hour on public service salary? If you take the $90 billion growth only from 2020 to now, that's $90 billion more per year in people's pocket, more than they were getting in 2020 in the public service. Did he calculate how much more the hourly expenditure on public sector wages? He didn't do that. Of course, I don't believe he could do it because Exxon wouldn't do that calculation. And so he repeats this nonsense about, oh, we're getting hourly rates. But then he goes on. So I looked at it a little bit deeper. And he put his foot right in his mouth again. He said, let's pass a law and say that we must save 10% of the money that we get from oil and gas at a minimum. So if were to look at the sliding scale, in maybe 2-3 years' time, we'll be saving not 10%, but 50% of the revenue nearly. 50%. Because once you get up past, on the sliding scale, past a threshold, the rate of saving increases dramatically. Should look at the law that we pass and the sliding scale. That's one. And then he says, oh, let's put aside 10.5% for the cash. Give that to cash, everybody. 10.5. You got 1.5. Exxon give you that number from oil now. I have it here. Exxon, like now 1.5. It says the payment shall not exceed 10.5% of the annual transfer to the NRF. So if you take $300 billion today, and you take, say, 10% of it, which is $30 billion, and you divide by 850,000 people, you will probably get about $35,000 Guyana dollars per year. That's what he wants transferred to us. 35,000 Guyana dollars per year. And next year, if we double, you get 70,000 Guyana dollars. And he believes that that is the great proposal that we must implement now. You must pass a law. Some of our people will get much more than this, significantly more than this that he's proposing. But he believes that this is how we must operate. You know why he is saying all of this? Because you don't think it through. But my core point is that here is a person who accuses the PPP of short-termism. They need a development plan. They don't have one to generate wealth as yet, to generate diversification, to create future income for our people. But he has a plan how to distribute money, spend money, not to, it's an old APNU thing. Don't forget about generating wealth for the country. Let's think about spending it. And I can tell you in great detail about how I want the money spent. So what about the years that we don't have any money? Or what if oil prices? There's a prediction now that oil prices could even fall because of oversupply. What if it comes down in the future? What are people going to be left with? So they're very convenient too about changing their positions. Starbuck News didn't look back to see what they said when they were in government. So this is what April 18, 2017, Trotman said, government unlikely to make cash payments to citizens from oil wealth. And this is what Trotman said, people just sit back and don't believe they need to do anything but receive and spending habits go bad. That's what Trotman said, that they're not going to give no money from the oil wealth because people would sit back and believe they don't need to do anything and the habits would be bad. This is one of the leaders, I think chairman of his party now. So he would complain too. He doesn't have a position on renegotiation. Patterson saying, oh, we will support the government on renegotiating. Trotman said now, then, oh, he signed the contract, now he's changed his position. He may change it now. And the only thing is that you're out of government, so you change your position when you're out of government. But this really betrays their true feeling, what they felt at that time. They were not going to give a cent of oil money to ordinary people. So that was in a Starbuck News article. The Marar waves, scrap taxes instead of giving oil money handouts. The idea of handing out oil money to Guyanese continues to get low marks from experts such as Finance Minister Winston Jordan and Investment Fund Manager David Pollard. 24th of July 2019, they spoke about people getting a feeling of being entitled. That was their position then. 22nd of September 2019, Granger, pushing high quality education, no room for handouts from oil money. This was their position then. Now, they don't have a long-term plan. He wants us to get involved in a long-term plan. Starbuck News accuses us of short-termism, but they got a plan to spend money. No plan to develop wealth. Nothing about any other sector of the economy. So this tells you a lot about the nature of these parties. They make declarative statements that sound very intellectual and very lofty and very inclusive. Oh, let's all get together and develop a plan for Guyana. Oh, it's a great idea. And I don't have a problem with us doing that, but you have to be honest about it. You have to say you have no plan, you have no idea, you're just winging it every week, and you're just misleading people because your positions in the past belie. They basically prove that you had no intention whatsoever to help anyone. And I think we have demonstrated this in both issues, on both issues. So the same Starbuck News now should go back to their own article to see how far we have come as a country. Now, this was an article published in 1989, 2nd of December, and republished by the Starbuck News on the 2nd of December 2016 at their 30th anniversary. And it says, Guyana now ranked below Haiti, McIntyre report. Starbuck article, Guyana now ranked below Haiti, McIntyre report. So, of every country in the Western Hemisphere, we were at the lowest level, even below Haiti, 1989. This was 2 years. We were supposed to have elections in 1990, and then APNU didn't hold the elections. They got 2 additional years because the last election was 85, 1990. They delayed it up to 1992. But on the eve of, this was December 1990, 2 years before we took office. In fact, less than 2 years before we took office, Guyana was ranked below Haiti. Shall I read some of this article for you? Guyana has slipped below Haiti and now ranked as the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. This is the startling conclusion in the just released McIntyre report, which also says the country needs a political system which encourages the participation of all Guyanese in a recovery program. At that time, you recall, we didn't have any democracy. We didn't have free and fair elections. The document is the work of a Commonwealth team headed by former CARICOM Secretary General, Mr. Alistair McIntyre. The mission spent over a year analyzing the state of affairs here, and its recommendations circulated in the Parliament this week by government attempt to point the way forward. The mission also found that the steady economic and financial deterioration of the country has led to people leaving the country at a rate of about 1,000 a month. This rate works out to about 3% of people of working age leaving the country each year. It puts inflation at 50% per annum and unemployment at 40% of the workforce. Government excessive control of the economy, which limited the role of private initiative and investment, also contributed to massive migration of Guyana's best and brightest, the team says. The grim financial and economic data apart, the report says the greater loss has been the deterioration in the physical quality of life of the population. Average incomes have fallen since 1980 by 50%, and hunger and malnutrition have grown. So let me read that again for you. The grim financial and economic data apart, the report says the greater loss has been the deterioration in the physical quality of life of the population. Average incomes have fallen since 1980 by 50%, and hunger and malnutrition have grown. Homelessness and vagrancy have become major problems, and the poor spend most of their time looking for food, the mission found. You hearing me? You wouldn't believe this is Guyana we're talking about. That homelessness, vagrancy, the poor people spend most of their time looking for food. That's the Guyana we have come from. That's it. It also feels Guyana is among the most heavily indebted developing countries in the world. And the team says it's likely that the indebtedness works out to about $2,500 US for every man, woman, and child. At that time, you were earning $25 a month. The average wage was 25 US dollars a month. So if the debt per person, every man, woman, and child, was 2,500 US dollars. Just imagine how many years you had to work. You're earning $250, basically $300 a year, US dollars. So how many years you had to work if you had to clear the debt alone, if you take all their income. This was Guyana. And people forget this, where people are searching for food, homelessness, and vagrancy. This was a McIntyre report. McIntyre was a former CARICOM Secretary General and headed a Commonwealth team. This was their finding on Guyana. This was at the end of APNU 28 years in office. Less than 2 years before they ended 28 years of managing this country. And that was the end point. That's what they left us as a legacy. Homelessness, vagrancy, the poor, massive amounts of homelessness and vagrancy, the poor spending time searching for food, 40% at the minimum unemployment, 50% inflation, $2,500 of debt, nothing. Or below Haiti, our income level was below Haiti. How come this is the legacy of this political party that would have you believe that they have a great track record? And what did they do in the 5 years? They didn't do much better in the 5 years. So every improvement that we've seen in this country, today we're the fastest growing economy in the world. Our per capita GDP is going to be the highest in this region, if not already the highest today. So from the lowest, today is the highest. We got rid of the debt, most of the debt, even before we started producing oil or getting income from oil. Long before that, our debt became more sustainable. We were one of the fastest growing economies. We had gotten rid of most of the homelessness and the vagrancy because we gave out 100,000 house lots. We had 60,000 new houses in this country. People started finding food. They started finding employment. That's not short-termism that I hear about. That's because we're planning. Healthcare improved, everything. Cut inflation rate to single-digit inflation. We started reducing the balance of payment deficit, the fiscal deficit. In interest rates came down from 40% for even mortgages to now 4 or 5% for mortgages, so you can own homes. That's what our tenure is about. And you say short-termism. That's the PPP stewardship in office. And they defined the starting point. The Starbuck News defined the starting point. So we didn't only work to win elections. So what if we work to win elections and we do what we promised the people? They don't even ask the AFC. Look at their own wishy-washy position on this whole conflict of interest. You think a PPP person could have been on the payroll of the ExxonMobil and still run a political party in opposition in parliament? Just imagine if I was part of on Exxon's payroll when we were in opposition. Just imagine that. And I noticed Nigel Youth calculated, or had Exxon calculate how much taxes we are collecting per hour. I wonder what's his rate per hour at Exxon. He didn't tell us that too. Maybe since he's so transparent about everything, he should release what his law firm charges, the rate per hour for work to Exxon. Because he is being paid, he's on their payroll. And you think we're worried about him? They have no plan, they don't have any track record. They have no plan that we've established that today. He knows that. He wants somebody else to do the work for him because they're incapable. His party is incapable. Not that they didn't have opportunities to. They're intellectually incapable. And it's not because the AFC has this pretense. And even PNC and the PPP have greater, we just don't wear it on our shoulders, but both parties have a greater intellectual depth than this AFC, this make-believe, and this pretense at sophistication. And it's laughable. It could fool a few people, the pretense of sophistication. We saw it from Cathy Hughes, and it runs through the whole AFC. Pretense at sophistication. So, we want a national plan developed, and all the parties must get together. You tell us what your plans are too. We'll get together. We want that to happen, but you need to tell us a bit more about what you're thinking, not the kinds of positions we see every week. We have seen by the way, the same, he's calling for a state planning commission. In this very period when we became like below Haiti, we had a state planning commission. Nigel Lewis, we also need a state planning commission. He wants a state, we had a state planning commission in that period when we became poorer than Haiti. They're going back fossils. It shows that they're not thinking through this issue. I would like to come back and tackle that article again, because I think we allow these people to come in and lecture us, these so-called people, and Starbuck News gets rapturously involved with them because it supports a particular narrative. But it's very shallow, the analysis that was done about why Latin America and the Caribbean has seen recurrent crises. Part of it is bad policies, but a significant part of it is external environment in which they operate. So, I'm extremely pleased that with the serious effort, you've seen it, to tackle the security environment in the country. The fact that you're seeing more visible expressions of the successes of the police force and by extension the joint services is because of the hard work of many people in these agencies, the interagency collaboration that's taking place between all the agencies that deal with security and fighting crime and transnational crime in Guyana. And so they have strengthened their intelligence. You have greater interagency collaboration. They have targeted operations, and you're seeing success from this. The fact that you see a lot of seizure of weapons here is because of that. Some collaboration with our partners, but also we still need to get more support from our external partners. The president himself has expressed concern to some of the international partners, particularly the US, that we need greater assistance in stopping the flow of weapons coming into our region from this country and other countries. Because a lot of the weapons come in from the United States of America. They come in through barrels and all sorts of things. And so this is not a new position. It's been expressed overwhelmingly by CARICOM, even when they met with the highest levels in the US government. These positions have been expressed recently and as far back As when I was president, I remember a meeting in Trinidad and Tobago at which President Obama was present and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. I spoke on this matter and I raised this concern that the relationship has to be symmetrical, that we do a lot of work assisting and collaborating with the US to tackle the transnational threat of drugs going into their territories, but we don't see the same level of effort on the part of the United States assisting us with gun smuggle into our territory. They knew this was a problem raised by Mexico, etc. And since then, even at the highest level, President Obama, we raised this with, and Hillary Clinton at that meeting. I personally raised this matter then. And it continues to be raised by CARICOM, and the President Ali himself has expressed this. So we need that assistance and enhanced collaboration in this area too, but you've seen more and more work being done in this area, and it will continue. I don't see that being spoken about because sometimes we just pillory policemen all the time and the joint services, and we try to magnify if there are illegalities committed by members of the joint force services, and they have to face the law like every other citizen and be accountable, and there'll be no cover-up. We made that clear. However, when they do their work, we get all sorts of people coming out of the woodwork who wouldn't have an opinion on anything else, expressing one now. Nigel used one street protest to fight against crime. I recall that several of the criminals, the people who were massacring people in Buxton, children, including one who killed some of those kids on the East Coast, and were participating in the murder of people in Bartica and Agricola and everywhere else. He was the lawyer. You recall when there was a conflict of interest with him, and again, when the foreman of the jury in that case was one of his clients and failed to disclose it to the court. There is a Starbuck News article about this. There were several other instances. With the Henry boys, how sought to make it political rather than a law and order issue and a criminality issue involving criminals. We saw the same thing about removing evidence, basically from the gas station, Hamilton gas station. Nigel Hughes was involved in all of these matters. And he's concerned now, and I bet if you catch one of these criminals, he may very well end up being their defense attorney. And trust me, the biggest heist, the biggest stealing that you could do is to steal a whole country through undemocratic elections. And I gather he's the lawyer for the infamous trio, which I think the cases are going to start very soon for those who try to steal elections. And we get, again, the big moralizing. Oh, we need this here, we need to focus on crime and criminality. That would undermine the joint services, accuse them. He has constantly accused the joint services of transgressions every time, including, in many cases, falsely so, to secure release for his clients. So I hope that we don't get the same sort of publicity about these efforts and the efforts to end the transnational smuggling of gold too, because the operations have yielded success more than any time on the APNU. And they call for, let's do something about gold declaration. I've seen, as I said last week, I've seen all the reports were with the last government. All the reports were there. So I hope that the police would also be commended for this. I see in some cases they want external agencies to investigate, to undermine local institutions. We have depoliticized SOCU. We have depoliticized SOCU. SOCU doesn't go after political opponents now. They go after criminal matters. That used to happen under APNU. It was politicized. SOCU is an agency dedicated to this sort of investigation. There will be no cover-up. And it's shameful that some people try to undermine the same institutions that we are all trying to build. I've seen some funny headlines. WPA, do they still exist? Warns against snap elections. And they get an article about that. They're just a waste of time party. Now, we made it clear there'll be no snap elections. How many times do we have to say this? And the president of this country will call elections. But to get relevance again, or warns against snap elections, and they get a big article in the Kaichor News trying to fill their place, their space with anti-PPP propaganda. The newspapers. Kaichor News again. Norton open to coalescing with AFC in 2025. What is this about? Is this news? They were coalition partners all the time. It's not like, anything new. This is just nonsense. They're going to get together. Anybody who has any sense knows that they will get together and for the elections. And both of them together, they're going to lose together. Whatever. They're going to all get together and lose together. Because we ain't all worried about any candidates, Nigel Hughes, Norton, or anyone else that they may want to run as presidential candidate. People, they have defined themselves already to this country, and people don't trust a word that they say. You think you can walk around the market and say to people, you're not doing so well? It's true, maybe in many places people don't go to the markets anymore to shop, because many of them, and we have to look at that, because many of them are shopping elsewhere because the income levels have grown. So people have to readjust to that. Not because things are getting worse. So they think that under racism is not going to work. They lost a big potent tool that they have. So what kind of story is this in the Kaichor News? Oh, they're open to coalescing with each other. Sometimes I read these newspapers and I say, oh, you don't have anything to write about? You write about the obvious all the time. Guyanese must get more from new oil project, Patterson, but declined to say how. But what else do you expect from a party that signed the agreement? The chairman of the party signed the agreement. No, the leader of the party, I think, was that at that time, saying, I'm getting confused. The general secretary of the party was signed the agreement, and the chairman was the lawyer for the other side. What do you expect from a party like that? And they're going to try to. And how come Nigel Hughes said he's not going to talk anything about oil and gas anymore, but he's busy talking about how much taxes Exxon pay us? It's very instructive for a man to say, oh, I'm going to leave everything to my committee to talk about oil and gas on policies. But he is talking about what his client is giving to the government of Guyana. It should tell you a lot. We've seen the people come out. Anand Gulsaran has come out back. All of them, they're getting activated. I told you about the lunatic fringe and the hostile groups that are to the PPP. So they all surface at once. They're going crazy now. I saw Elizabeth Hughes wants to know, Nigel Hughes' sister in a letter today wants to know about the control center, how much it's costing. They got worked up because some story about some transformers that came into the country for the gas to energy project came in. The Alfred Bulai says, oh, you didn't need these transformers if you had gone my route to do solar. But you need other things. You need you always need transformers. And you need other things, control panels on solar. And you need inverters, and you need battery storage. Up to now, I challenge him and Glenn Lal to give us a proposal for base load power from solar, that 24 hours power, and what it will cost cents per kilowatt hour. Of course, he was right on one thing, that it's 22 cents per kilowatt hour. And that is why in his letter, we said we're working towards a 50% reduction to about 11 cents per kilowatt hour when the gas to energy project is completed, which will be half of what it is today. So he came out too. Then you have the Anand Gulsaran. So just imagine this big, long thing. Starbuck News, that carries this man as an independent columnist, should read back what he wrote here. And this is a person who talks about there was no breach of the Procurement Act when he got the contract to do the forensic audit. So the first thing he said, oh, these were not audits. This was a kind of stock taking. I don't know about stock taking. You get the large. He's come from an auditor general to do stock taking now in these ministries. If you listen to every word said by every minister and every member of that government in the past, Soku, the ministers who spoke in Parliament, you check their Hansards. They describe what he did as audits, not stock taking. So to get away from the violation of the Audit Act, which says only the Auditor General or the Public Accounts Committee can approve an audit, he's decided now to call the audit he did a stock taking. So, disingenuous. Clear though for everyone to see what it's about. And then he says, was there a breach of the Procurement Act? There was no breach of the Procurement Act. So, considering the above, listen to this carefully, how this person, Anand Gulsaran, got these contracts to do audits. Now remember, the law says only the Auditor General or the Public Accounts of Parliament can approve these contracts, not the minister. That's the law of the country. But listen to the following that he wrote, and it would tell you a bit about what took place on the APNU. Considering the above, the Ministry of Finance decided to request chartered accounting firms, as well as individuals with the relevant training and experience to submit proposals for undertaking these special audits. Now we move from stock taking at the beginning to special audits. The junior Minister of Finance contacted me and gave the list of entities to be the subject of special audits, along with the related terms of reference. He then asked me to identify which entities I would like to audit. I then submitted my proposals for 4 entities referred to above. The minister subsequently told me that my proposals were the most competitive in terms of fees and completion deadlines. It was on this basis that I was selected to undertake these special audits. Now, just imagine under the PPP, the Minister of Finance calls a man and says, we'd like to do these audits. Here are all the things that we want to do the audit for. Which one would you like to do? The person says, oh, I like those 4. So he says, send me the proposals for the 4. I then get a call back from the Minister of Finance, not from the procurement authorities. Oh, your 4 have been approved. Proceed. You have contracts worth millions of dollars for the 4. That's the procurement that's how they procure these audits. If this isn't obscene, and he is documented, I did not know it was so bad. I thought he actually submitted the proposals to the tender board or to someone else, and then they decided. I didn't know he had personal calls from the Minister of Finance, and they told him, gave him a list and said, which would you like? And then he chose 4, and then got the 4 awarded to him. He picked which 4 he wanted and got millions of dollars paid. Imagine that happening now. Imagine, it's shocking that this took place. And he puts this, he's documented it now. He's documented. This used to happen under APNU. The ministers call around. You remember Patterson now is charged. He took an unsolicited bid to the cabinet, got the cabinet illegally to approve it, and then for $150-something million, and they awarded the contract. You had to go to ministers all the time. There was no procurement system. Now they complain, oh, it went to the tender board, there's a breach in the evaluation. There was no evaluation here. There was no evaluation, there was no public tender, there was no selective tender. The minister called him and gave him a choice what to pick, and then gave him a contract to spend public money worth millions of dollars. And why did they call him if he didn't have, and he had a preference to choose which ones he wanted? As an individual, he didn't have an audit firm, an accounting firm, and you had to be really close to APNU to really get that treatment. To be called by the minister and say, pick what you want, boy. This is how we award contracts. And this is what he wrote. And this is not unique to him. This is what happened. And why do you think they're all getting so worked up? I'm sure you would find a similar situation with the GHK Lal, who writes all the time. You'd find a similar situation at the Gold Board. And that's what they get so angry with the PPP for, that we cut out their runnings. They cut out their runnings. So all the principles, oh, we are opposed to Exxon, now goes out the window. They're opposed to the PPP because of this. And you will examine, I will show you the link that the GHRA had with the government at that time too, and how much they earned from the government through consultancies. Almost all the organizations and the preferences that Red Thread had. Why do you think they're opposed to us? That's why they're all gonna come out of the woodwork to oppose the PPP, because this is gone. You can't get a contract like this, get called by a minister and not handed a contract anymore, which they grew accustomed to in the 5 years. And that was their plan. But that doesn't get written, because that was great procurement. That was the perfect procurement that we had under APNU. Worked well. Not the ones that we're trying to do now. There, maybe I should end there for the day. Yeah, because I have a few other things. Thank you. Yes, go on. Oh, you have the microphone. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Mikhail Rodriguez for Daybreak News. It seems amidst the unprecedented development, infrastructure and otherwise in Guyana by the PPP, it seems that the PPP-led administration is damned if they do and if they don't. Yeah. Nonetheless, there are and have been glaring inconsistencies in our system. One such is what is being seen as a miscarriage of justice too many times in the judicial system. One instance I experienced is a gentleman under the influence of alcohol who was tested to be under the influence of alcohol, hit down a national cyclist, killed him. I was there when the test was done. He walked free from that, PNC member Gary Bess. Too many times there are miscarriages of justice. The inability to address or see and convict persons who try to steal an election that the world witnessed. What is the PPP's administration's plan as it relates to the judicial system and the amount of times the judicial system is being brought into disrepute?
So I don't want to speak about the judicial system en bloc, because the view I express here might be of a personal nature, and as a political party, as general secretary of this party. So there are many people in the judiciary who work very hard, and they deliver justice on the basis of the facts before them. And we can all be proud of their work. They work in an impartial manner, and they do not allow political or other extraneous considerations to influence their decisions. But I can't say that for every member of the judicial system, because I've seen so many inconsistent positions taken that lead me to conclude that the cases and the decisions made on the cases cannot be supported by the facts before the judicial officer. And there had to be some other extraneous consideration. In the election period, we witnessed that. And whilst you had some bright, shining stars in the judiciary who stood out on the basis of their integrity and the decisions that they made, had it not been for the Caribbean Court of Justice, Guyana joining that court for the very reason that we were concerned about the final, having a final decision here. And you recall the history of that, when Burnham did not want any external court to have the locals to have recourse to an external court. When he started rigging the elections in Guyana, he removed us from the Privy Council. And we needed that external review once again to ensure that we keep our decisions here, political or judicial decisions, or decisions from our courts, apolitical. So They can't be in favor of government, opposition, or any other parties. They have to be on the basis of facts. And that's why you have an independent court. And we joined that. But had it not been for us being part of the CCJ, APNU would have been in office today. You recall the last decisions that went to the CCJ said that Lowenfield basically was justified in determining what a valid vote was. He had the powers to do that, and he could have removed 175,000 PPP voters and declared them invalid. That was the last decision that left our shores and went to the CCJ. So I will be the last person here as General Secretary of this party to say that I believe that all decisions in the judiciary are made on the basis of the facts before them and on the basis of highest standards. But you do have really good decisions, and our system works. You have a lot of judges who work extremely hard, and we're extremely proud of them. Now, with the addition of additional judges, 10 new judges, we expect the workload to be lightened, and we expect that the Constitution be complied with, that decisions are written up within 4 months of conclusion of the case. There are no excuses for that, because all the parties agreed that it was adequate time from the completion of the hearing to writing decisions. And you can be removed from the judiciary for transgressions. And we had cases when I was president where hundreds of cases, people were retiring, and hundreds of cases were not written, the decisions were not, the judgments were not written. And people had their lives on the hold, who were seeking justice from our system. Just imagine you have to start over. Some of them were in the court for 5 years, 10 years, and could not get a decision out of the court system. So we've invested a lot in this. We're investing a lot. Every judge there, that we put in the system is significant increases. If you look at the budget going to that sector has grown phenomenally. But we expect this to happen. So that's what I will say. On these matters, on the elections matter, they almost became a political football. Nobody wants to hear them, the cases. And that's why the big delay. And then the lawyers too tried to file, the Chief Justice had to dismiss something before, I think, the High Court, because they said that GCOM released some minutes and they shouldn't release the minutes. All delaying tactic. Let's see how it goes. But I know for sure what the world saw is that these individuals tried to steal the election. A COI that we had saw that these individuals concluded that they tried to steal the elections in favor of the PNC. Nigel Hughes will go there to try to defend that because he was the 64 is the majority of 34 is the majority of 65 men, and argued this eloquently. We didn't understand the law in Guyana. Everybody in parliament, he was rounding up half a man and three-quarter man and all kind of stuff. Bullshit, yes. So he's going to defend them, and you'd hear all kinds of fabrication again coming out in the next few weeks. But we're watching it carefully.
Dr. Jagdeo, just a follow-up to that question. So no system in the world is perfect. And there are some judges that are guided by the law, and there's some judges that seem to be confused, I would suggest. Is the PPP satisfied with the way the judicial system is, or is there any possibility for adjustment that will see more checks and balances in the judicial system that would afford the regular Guyanese fairness?
Well, the biggest complaint that I've heard as president and until today is how long it takes to have your case heard. The second complaint is that when the cases are heard, then decisions are not written up on time. And therefore it slows the whole system down. So you can't appeal, you can't move on, or you don't get justice. Those are the two biggest concerns I've heard, and we sought as a country together, all the parties, to address this question in the past by putting in the 4 months requirement to write your decision. And now, hopefully, with the complement, increasing the complement of judges, the number of judges, we would have the cases heard faster. So that's how we're addressing the system. We can't tell an individual judge how to rule on a particular matter. And that's why if a citizen believes that a judge has ruled on the basis of some other consideration apart from the facts before them, and that's your right to believe that. This is a free country. You have the right of appeal. And you can go all the way to the CCJ. That's the oversight. The oversight is in the judicial system itself, not for a politician to say that, oh, we believe this is a wrong ruling, so this judge must now face disciplinary action. We can't do that. Because it would mean that we have a standard as to what is the right and wrong judgment. We can only ask for speedier administration of justice, consistency in the application of the law, but we can't tell judges how to rule, or magistrates.
This is where there have been several inconsistencies with judges, even in those cases, because not every citizen can go to the CCJ, Dr. Jagdeo, could afford that.
But there is no mechanism, because then nowhere in the world where, because a judge rules a particular way, I think that should affect promotions. In the judiciary itself, at the JSC and by the Chancellor and Chief Justice, that they must look at the rulings themselves. I was looking at the Chief Justice of India. India has a huge judiciary. It's a massive country, and 1-point-something billion people, and a lot of their precedents are used across the world, particularly in those who follow that rule, precedent-based law. And the Chief Justice was saying, when we interview judges for higher posts, we also look at the quality of their judgment. Sometimes in our system, people believe that it's how long you're on the bench, the number of years that you're on the bench, that would serve as the basis for your promotion. So maybe the judiciary should consider that itself, the JSC and the top post, the Chancellor and the Chief Justice, when they decide how to promote people. But that's not a consideration for the executive. The executive arm of the government cannot deal with that. So if you feel aggrieved as an individual, then you need to go back to the court and make your case, and even at a high level. Your
administration and the Americans have recently been talking about a good relationship and how things are all hunky-dunky-dory with you guys. While sanctions were brought against 3 individuals in Guyana, totally blindsiding the government, a number of instances that doesn't have any merit but seems accidentally or orchestrated to embarrass the government. The AFC leader, Nigel Hughes, has taken a stand with Exxon to look past cries by the government of duplicitous behavior, and that shouldn't happen. Nigel Hughes representing Exxon, it should be a conflict of interest, but Exxon and Nigel Hughes, who's now the AFC leader, stood against cries by the government of that. Is the PPP administration considering the way America plays a role in geopolitics across the world, that we might be played into some game here in light of the fact of the importance of Exxon to America?
I support the view that our relations have grown enormously and that we have a really great working relationship with the US government almost at every level. We've had the US unflinching support on the border issue with Venezuela, which is crucial to Guyana. We've had collaboration in the security sectors on fighting transnational crime, particularly drug trafficking. We have had a series of US investors coming to Guyana who have been investing here, unlike in the past when very few US investors were here. We have had a large number of US contractors have come and gotten business here. We collaborate on a lot of international issues, Haiti, a whole range of other regional and international issues. We share some core principles on democracy and the rule of law. We have excellent relations in many other sectors. That doesn't mean that on every matter we'll see eye to eye. However, the United States of America doesn't have to coordinate every policy they have with us to say that they have a great working relationship with us. So the sanction against individuals was done on the basis of investigations that the US did. And they sanctioned certain individuals here. The United States, when you go into the United States of America, you have to satisfy them that you're not a threat to their existence and you can enter. They want additional information. As a tool to provide additional information, they can request your phone. Whatever they find on your phone, it could be, they can use it. We can't seize Guyanese people's phone here. We can't seize their phones in Guyana because our citizens have a different right. We don't seize their phones just like that and say, open up your phone. They do that when you go into their border because they have a different set of laws. So I don't know what info they're privy to. We asked them to share the information. So we wrote saying you've sanctioned these individuals. The Mohammeds saying that X tons of gold were smuggled out of Guyana and that they evaded 50 million US dollars in taxes. We want to do our own investigation so we can collect our taxes and prosecute these individuals on the basis of laws in Guyana that they broke. They wrote us back saying, you can't write directly to the head of Treasury because we wrote the secretary to the Treasury there, or you have to write to these agencies. And the Minister of Finance cannot write, it's the Attorney General. The Attorney General has written now. We've asked for information through GRA, and GRA had to write through the prescribed authority. So we're hoping we can get this information. We're hoping in the spirit of the partnership, we can get this information. And this information would allow us to determine the extent of criminality here and allow us to collect taxes evaded if they're evaded. So that's the basis on which we operate. We have to operate on the basis of our laws. And in our laws too, people have rights here and there should be natural justice. And therefore, we have to act in a certain manner. So that we have been playing this by the textbook. But we're doing our independent investigations too. We're looking at independent investigations whilst we're waiting in information. So I don't believe that that is an issue. I think there's a concern about whether some of the lies being told by people like Burke and the others are influencing the decisions made to embarrass people, PPP people, when they go to abroad. There's a concern expressed about that because people, that's in the public domain all the time. But they lie in such a prolific way, some of these social media people, that you don't know if they get information designed to embarrass or it's just fabrication. It's fabrication. So the ambassador said the minister was not questioned and detained. That was what Enrico Wolford reported. So he is facing a lawsuit now from the minister. So I don't want to get into all sorts of speculation about these matters. Now, last week I spoke of what they tell the international community every time they're here. I think Norton let that out of the bag, and I pointed out that one, they say, we're spending all of the money from the Natural Resources Fund without oversight, which is a lie because every cent has to be appropriated by Parliament. Two, they complain to the US about inflation in Guyana. And this is the party that wants to remove subsidy, and they complain to the US that has a higher rate of inflation than we have. They expect the US to tell us how to deal with inflation here. They complain to some of the other donors, not just the US, I'll say that. They complain how we are in bed with the drug traffickers, but they did that before. That was in the 2015 period, that's what they say. 4, we're involved in corruption. 5, we discriminate against Afro-Guyanese, and that there's no equity in the distribution of the assets. And for example, if you tell a US official who comes here about equity in distribution, I pointed this out, I can make a case to any official from any country, including the US, that we distribute our our assets as a government more equitably across race and politics than even the United States. So they complain about the obvious. So I don't know if any of that has any bearing on these matters, but we'll investigate that. So we're an open book on these matters. We're an open book on these matters. What we will not allow, though, is because their complaints are the same everywhere. And we will not allow them to go without having a position. And we're not going to be lectured to by anyone who observes a worse position in their own country and then come and tell us what to do here. So this is it. If we assess that it's political, then we deal with it differently. But I'm not going to get caught up with this. I notice you asked me 2 questions, and both might be related to you personally. That you got a judgment from the court, and the second one, somebody said your visa is denied. both cases, right? And now, just thinking about it, I realized that you had a great self-interest here on these matters. Yes.
Raul Nelson, around the region. Dr. Jagdeo, recently the Minister of Education spoke about the St. George's School of Sciences. Listening to her, the format is very impressive in terms of what the new school is supposed to be doing.
I didn't get that, sorry?
The St. George's School of Sciences, which used to be the St. George's Community High School before, but it's a new branded school now. Listening to her with the number of science subjects that will be done there, the students specifically being streamed for future science-related field, will we see this as a new format in terms of as they prepare students for science and technology? And also would we see, because from reports of several students who've wrote the common entrance and other students, there seems to be an high demand now of students wanting to get into that school because of the many careers that she spoke about. I think it's an excellent initiative, and the minister and her team should be congratulated on it. But what I want to know, would we see more of this types of school being created, maybe business, maybe other fields?
Yes, and so specialized schools are part of the overall plan, but let's not lose sight of what we're trying to achieve in education as a whole. So there are several initiatives we're working on. And that is why I want people to get an understanding. We probably need to talk about parents more too. So right at the beginning, we need more people and better trained people to work now before we even get to school. Now, today, the demand of the workforce, our country is changing. The demand for skills are different. We have a vast number of opportunities in many emerging sectors, and we need to train people for that. So we have embarked on this massive training program, the 50,000 that I told you, with all the reform of curricula, the short-term skills training, the creation of new institutes, etc., like the ones I mentioned in Berbice. That's the first element. The second element is increasing the budget for the school system, including teachers' wages and salaries. That would allow us to have better classrooms, more comfortable classrooms, equip them with the tools that we need to deliver modern education. 3, training more of our teachers. So of the 14,000 teachers we have, 6,000 are on the Gold Scholarship, 4,000 there, or 2,000 have finished Cyril Potter College in the last year. Then we're looking at an e-school model, not electronic teaching for school, but a total e-school model. We've removed the corporate tax on education. So it's a combined set of things. And then looking at these specialized schools maybe where you can deliver, where you have an entire focus on a single subject area or a stream where children want to go into that particular stream. It would probably yield a better and higher quality education. So it's a combination of things. I don't want to go through the whole model today, but I'm glad that you raise it, and it's a great thing, and there will be many more, the question you asked me, there will be many more similar schools around the country, but people should not lose sight of the bigger plan that we have for education improving. Now, when we said a world-class education to our people, we mean it, and it would involve a ton of other things, including upgrade of teachers. Yeah,
okay, the other question I wanted to ask, there's been a lot of criticism over the last several months of our medical professionals. But recently, a review of what has been taking place at some of the hospitals have seen that a number of our medical professionals are executing an high standard of work. We've seen also the fact that a lot of our nurses are working beyond the call of duty and doing a lot. What systems are being put in place to help to convince our local nurses to remain here in Guyana? Yeah. And secondly, we've seen that there's not a database of persons affected by kidney failure, and the number seems to be very alarming. Recently, I sought to get some numbers from the hospital, but there's no available numbers. Would a database be created of number of kidney patients here in Guyana, and also would more resources be placed towards treating kidney disease, which you see now seems to be in the high increase?
So on the kidney disease, a lot of the kidney failures are not due to hereditary factors. They're caused by other kinds of complications. So this is why a big focus on lifestyle changes. And that's why I spoke about primary health care. Taking primary health care and preventative care to a different level and different quality, and ensuring that more and more people it reaches more and more people. Now, what we need is the response from people. So if you're hypertensive or diabetic, a lot of our people are hypertensive or diabetic, they can't wait until they're at a point where they have retinal failure or kidney failure or something of the sort, or the foot has to be amputated, to come to the hospital. If they work to address this early on, you would not have what we can consider, although an epidemic of kidney failures. Epidemic is not the right word because, but it is something like that we have. So that is the first thing. Preventative care is important. When we have the foot clinics and all of those things, people need to go. Some people don't show up. They don't even go and show up for a blood test. We want to work with the kids in school to put pressure on their parents to go and get a routine blood test or a test on hypertension. So that's one. So prevention is crucial, and we have to do more of that because when the kidney fails, it's a lifelong kind of commitment there. It's either you get a transplant or you have to do dialysis, which costs a lot, and many people can't afford it. So we recognize this, and people were not getting any help from the government. When a couple of years ago, since we got into office, and we decided that every person who has to do dialysis gets a grant of $600,000 per year from the government. They were getting zero on that, and they're getting $600,000. But that it might be enough to do only about 1/3 to a half, depending on the rate, if it's 7,000 to 8,000 per session. right? So it might be per annum. That might be only half of what they have to pay. So anyone now who is going in for diabetes should get this grant, regardless of database or no database. They will get it. If they can prove that they are doing dialysis, they will get the grant. Okay? So at that time we had about 600 when we were looking at it in the past. They had a database that was given to us about 600 persons when we developed this initiative. So, but right now, regardless of the budget, the sum we budgeted, if you're doing dialysis, you will get the grant. And what was the first? Oh, the nurses and stuff like that, yeah. So we're gonna have to increase the working conditions, improve the salary of all of our professionals, teachers, nurses, etc. And it will go up in future years. You're gonna see a steep climb in the future years. We can't do it all at once. There would be that improvement there as people are trained better, etc. We want our people here. In the short term, we'd have to recruit some people, but I believe that ultimately the benefits would have to be increased to keep people there. You're competing with a huge market out there. People are finding, these big countries are just coming into the small countries, not just Guyana, and plucking all of the people and taking them away. The big countries, because they don't do any training. We would spend all of our money on training someone. And then they come and they just collect the nurse or someone else and they're gone. They don't spend much on training. They bring people in from abroad to work there. So they don't have that expenditure. But you have to live with this, and we live in a free country and people can freely move. A lot of the people, when they go, I've spoken to some nurses and others who went abroad. It's not all great there. When they look at the cost structure of those societies and they realize that the rentals and other stuff that they have to pay and other escalating costs, they're not doing much better in many cases. So we are hoping ultimately, and I want to say that sometimes people don't say this enough about our professionals too. They do a good job, and we have to keep increasing, and you will see that, increasing the remuneration. We're committed to that, but we have to do it in a sustainable way, not like APNU, share out all the money 1 year and then suffer for 2 generations. We have to do it sustainably, and we will do it. Look at that. Look at the growth since we got into office. So that's what I say. Yeah, please.
Good afternoon, sir. Nasa Williams, Skytree News. In relation to produced water for Hammerhead, Exxon's 7th project that they will be starting up in 2029, the opposition seems to be on 2 different ends of the spectrum with how the companies should be dealing with produced water. We have the PNC, they're all for reinjection, while the AFC is all for treatment, and the company is yet to decide on how they would handle this. Can you say what is the government's position on how Exxon should handle produced water for this project? And secondly, can you say currently how much the company is spending to treat produced water that they have for the other 3 projects that are producing right now?
Yeah, so first of all, there is an assumption that there will be a 7th project. So we will get the application soon, and at that time the government will determine through 2 permits. One, the license, and then the environmental permit, how it will deal with all of these issues. Our permits have all been made public, unlike in the APNU period, and we'll deal with it. But Exxon still has to demonstrate that they submit all the documents needed for us to assess whether the requirements are met. On the 7th project, we are yet to determine Whether we want that before on the cost bank now, ahead of any consideration of, or not consideration, but clarity on how we're moving with the monetization of the gas project. So those issues will be determined next week. How much does Kaitshore pay for electricity? How much does Kaitshore pay for electricity?
I don't bill Kaitshore for electricity. I don't know.
Then how would you ask me? Why would you ask me about? You think every day I'm checking with how much Exxon pays for treated water. Next week you'll ask me how much they're paying for snacks. How much? I deal with policy issues. So that would, like last week, the capping stock, they asked me, oh, Jagdeo doesn't know how much Exxon pays for capping stock. It's a subscription. You could easily find out what the rate of the subscription they pay at. So it's a ridiculous statements to give you headlines. How much do you think they pay for snacks in Exxon when they have a meeting? I don't know how much they pay for snacks, but we have an audit process to see whether the expenditure on activities that are done within the company, that they meet international standards. So that is my answer for you. When you could tell me how much you pay for snacks, then maybe I'd find out. Every week I have to find out now how much the Routledge used to pay for the taxi to come from the airport down to Georgetown.
Find a company that they get snacks from, I'll call the
Yes.
company and ask.
Huh?
When I find which company they use for snacks, I'll call the company and ask.
Oh, okay, call the company. You don't know which company they will produce snacks from?
I don't pay attention to snacks.
Oh, you don't pay attention
No.
to snacks? Oh, well, then you should. They may be inflating the snacks. We might be buying a tennis roll there for $30. I don't know what a six-pack of tennis roll, what it costs now. It might be $600 instead of $350. They may be inflating the cost for the tennis roll.
And don't you think that they may be inflating the cost that they pay for the treatment of the produced water as well?
These have to be audited. They have to be audited. That's the purpose of a post-audit.
Fair enough.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, all right.
Over the past 2 years, we've been asking for an update on the oil reserves, and recently S&P Global has come out with an estimation of these oil reserves being 18.7 barrels. Can you comment on this, and can you say if it is true? Can you give a reason to why the government hasn't been updating the public on this?
So the last report we had, remember I told you every quarter we get a report? I hope you recall that. Oh, you recall. So the next report is due within a week, maybe 1 week from now. So the last report had the level of reserve that we gave you. Let's see if this one will update the reserve. So when we get the new report, which is a requirement that the company has to fulfill, that is quarterly report, and it has to also, in that report, speak about updating reserves. At that time, we'll tell you what the figure is in the updated report.
Has also said that the US $2 billion guarantee can take care of an oil spill that impacts Guyana, TNT, and Venezuela. Can you say where do you stand on this? And do you think that this can be done given the amount of money?
It is a question that would all become redundant as soon as we pass the law that we are working on, because the law would obligate Exxon, and not just Exxon, but any, including the shipping companies, to take care of all the liabilities associated with any spill. the cost of cleanup as well as the economic damages done. So I don't want to speculate here. For example, if it is, assuming there is a blowout, and you can get into the ridiculous, and we have the capping stock in the country now, as you recognize, and it's very costly. I think you know what it is now. It's a massive piece of equipment, and if it's deployed immediately and you have 50 barrels of oil spill, then the 2 billion would be far more. They have insurance, then they have the 2 billion parent guarantee, and you have the assets of the company to do recourse. It might be more than adequate. But in any case, that will be a moot issue once the law is passed, because the law would override any guarantee or any agreement. I hope that Nigel Yu's party will support the law.
Do you have any updates to provide on the audit findings at this point in time?
Audit finding? No, I'm not reporting on audit findings here. I will not report on audit findings.
And finally, sir, when do you plan to join the rest of the world, the oil-producing world, in capping the interest rates charged by the oil companies?
Oh, I'm not dealing with that. That was dealt with 1 million times before. Yeah, that's a old question that's been dealt with 1 million times. You still got your text coming through? Glenn not sending you your notes, so I think he's not sending any text. Oh, you got the text, no?
Yeah, I got all the text, man.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
All the text. Good afternoon.
Right,
Lecturer
yeah.
Shervin Belgrave. Given OMA's past track record with the cyanide spill and the environmental damage and so caused, they have returned. What was the procedure there to reconcile ties between OMA and Guyana, given what happened in the past?
Well, it's two different companies now. It's two different companies, but so they have now returned. OMI has now returned. It's a different company, different ownership, very different ownership.
Put in place by the government to prevent, these companies damaging our environment and then leaving.
Yes, yeah, but our laws are clear on that matter. Our laws are clear. The legislation is clear, but it's not a return of OMI. It's just a totally different shareholding.
Thank you. I heard you mention that during your outreach in Berbice, you learned that people are finding trouble getting laborers and so forth. There's a view that's out there that with the fast pace that the approval of these projects and so forth, the oil sector is eating up these workers. Do you have any fear that
what is
the oil sector is eating up workers?
Is eating up the workers?
Do you have any fear that this could hamper some of these sectors that Guyana rely on for revenue and so forth, by they don't have labor and so forth, especially in the agriculture sector?
So a government has the duty to educate its people, which we're doing, giving them the tools so they can find better jobs. That is why when some ministries complain, oh, my engineer has left to another sector, the private sector, I say to them, so what? They've gone on, they may get a salary, maybe 150% of what they're getting. At the lower end, people not leaving because our rates are even more competitive than the private sector. At the upper end, we do have some hemorrhage. Or the local private sector say, we're losing people to another business entity that is paying more. People live in a free country. There should be labor mobility. If you want to leave Kaichor News tomorrow because you get a better offer, you should have the right to do so. And so our obligation is to train more of our people to control this sector. We've seen in many other countries where the oil and gas industry is run by mainly foreigners. We've passed a local content law to try to steer it to Guyanese. The 6,000 of our people who are working there now are working there because we have pushed the oil and gas companies to hire our people, and they tend to get higher wages. We should observe them. We need more labor in many sectors. Our agriculture has to change too, to go to higher levels of mechanization and productivity increases. So in the past, where it was labor intensive, we had to, like even at Gaisuko, they're relaying the fields to do mechanical harvesting, even mechanical sowing now of the cane. And they've done that successfully in some of the fields in Berbice. In the intermediate savannas where they're doing corn and soya, it's all mechanical. So we need to now go higher end, like hydroponics, vertical farming. In terms of nurseries, we have to do what we're doing now, tissue culture labs and stuff, so you can do more high-end work, pay people higher, but you get higher levels of productivity. So that's what we're trying to encourage right across the country. There may come a time when all of our people are working and they're getting better paying jobs, that we have to have an immigration policy. But it's down the road. We do allow some people to come in and work now on the big projects because we don't want them to compete. You know, like the labor, if the Chinese had to hire local labor to work only on that, the bridge, all local labor, we'd have a big problem here in 4-2. So we do allow some of that, but that's the idea. You can't prohibit people from earning more and from doing better for themselves. The government has to give people opportunities and prepare them. And that's what we want for all of our people. So be it, we're in an enviable position that we have jobs. You go around the Caribbean, go around to our neighbors, find out in many parts of the world, people can't find work. It used to be like that just 4 short years ago on the APNU. You're walking around the place, people can't find a job. So we are in a great position today. It's not something it's something we have to think about, but we can't stop the development because we want to keep people in their low-paying jobs all their lives.
Yeah, that I'm not asking the question in that context that we should stop them. I just wanted to know what's the government
plan.
Yes,
but I think you should understand our philosophy. If you understand our philosophy and how it differs from others, then the question is that we can go with producing higher levels. And the oil and gas sector is not an intensive sector. We have made it more that more of our people are employed here because of the subsidiary services to the industry. But it's not a labor-intensive industry. So you have some countries that have massive unemployment, like Trinidad and Tobago, but they had an oil and gas industry for a long time. So it's more capital intensive. If you look at the capital expenditure per worker, you would see that it far exceeds any other sector of the economy in the labor industry and in the oil and gas sector. So you have to bear those factors in consideration.
A follow-up. You might want to say I'm asking a hypothetical here, but you said that your government
let's forget the hypotheticals because
I'm asking it in the context that you said you have
let's get with the real ones because.
But if you could hear me out, should the oil and gas industry kill one sector in Guyana, is the money that we're receiving now enough to cushion such something happen like that?
But we are managing. What the APNU and the others are proposing would do exactly like that. Kill the other sectors. You saw what Nigel just said. I read it out to you. No plan for, not a single, he doesn't have a plan for agriculture, for mining, for forestry, for nothing. Infrastructure, nothing. He wants us to work together and develop. But he wants to spend money, oil money. and spend money in a way that give people small sums, but they wouldn't even, so that would just, the money that we don't have basically. So just think about us and think about what you hear from the opposition and think about which will kill not just a sector in Guyana, but the whole economy. We'll get like Venezuela rapidly with a Niger Lewis and Norton. Rapidly. You get there so quickly, in a blink of an eye, you get there. Or many of the other countries in the world. So we're managing in a way as not to have that happen. And that's why the change in relative prices is important. The competitiveness of your exchange rate is a vital tool, because that's the transmission mechanism through which it kills the agriculture, manufacturing sectors of the economy through the Dutch disease. The transmission mechanism is often the exchange rate, the appreciation of the exchange rate, and that's managed carefully.
My final question, are you concerned or worried that the money that we're receiving now from the oil sector is not enough to build our own capacity to independently monitor the sector and at the same time take care of the welfare of our people?
The money that we're getting at this stage from the oil and gas sector is a fraction of our development needs as a country. All of our people want their roads fixed. They want to live with roads fixed. When APNU says don't build infrastructure, you go to communities across Guyana and say to people, APNU doesn't want us to build infrastructure, so we can't do your road. They want their roads fixed. They want to be safe from flooding. So they expect you to spend on cokers, pumping capacity, etc. They want to have highways that they don't have to be stuck in a traffic jam and waste an hour of their time on the road because of a huge traffic jam, with the number of vehicles that are coming into the country. So they want cheap power, they want reliable power, they don't want blackouts every half an hour. They want cheap, reliable power. They want security, safe homes and stuff like that. They want to make sure that they're not robbed, etc., by people. They want leisure time. They want the sporting facilities built so people can, have a leisure time. These are legitimate needs of people. And with all those needs, what we get now is a fraction of that. I told you already, of the 300 billion we're getting, 90 billion goes to the incremental increase, wages and salaries alone. And the rest, if you add health and education alone, it's gone. All of it. So you have to do that. There would be a time when we get to more, because we have paid back for a lot of the projects, where our revenue would meet our development needs in the sense of how much we can absorb annually in terms of projects, and we save for the future. And we're getting to that point soon, but not today. So this is why I've argued that we have to be sustainable in this approach. The needs are now at this time they're far greater than the money we get. So Nigel Liu's attempting to show his bosses up in a good light is trying to say, oh, look how much money they get per hour, per minute, per second, or whatever. I think they calculated that. But he doesn't look at the needs of the people. You tell people who live in communities that they can't have reliable power, that we mustn't spend the money on getting a power supply that's reliable and cheaper. They don't have a plan, They haven't outlined any as yet. Not on hydro, not on solar, not on gas, not on anything. They have no plan, zero, but they want it fixed. We have a plan, we're implementing it, And we get blamed for doing it. They say, oh, Sabbath News is political. All right, thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Vice President, recently the Prime Ministers of Grenada and St. Vincent praised Guyana for their support during the hurricane season. However, the Prime Minister of Jamaica recently said that no country has come to their aid, with Guyana offering to assist with their electricity restoration. Is there any further assistance that Guyana has offered the Jamaica in terms of rebuilding from the hurricane, considering the significant damage that was done?
So we would help based on our capacity. They badly needed linesmen, and I saw a few were pledged to them. But we need the linesmen here too, with all the blackout that we have. And the system is an old transmission system we have. So we have always been helping countries, but that help has to be measured against your own needs here too. I told you one time when we didn't have much money, we gave Haiti $1 million. And at that time, in comparison to our gross domestic product, when you look at the table that the UN put out, we were number 1 in the world in terms of help to Haiti, in relation to GDP, contribution in relation to GDP. So we will help. We will help the Caribbean countries because this is a big problem, but the recurrent, it can't be every season when you lose welfare that we address this issue. That is why we've been in the forefront of pushing for adaptation money to flow for these countries at scale so they can make their infrastructure climate resilient. So you can start putting cables that run underground so that not every hurricane season you'd have a destruction of the lines. You can start climate proofing your schools and hospitals and other public buildings by putting on solid roofs that could serve as shelters so that they don't get blown off when you have a Category 3 hurricane, much less a Category 5 hurricane. So that is why we've been in the forefront of pushing the world and to make sure that adaptation money flows to these countries at scale. On our own adaptation measures, we can't wait for that. That is why we're funding them. Our vulnerability is water management. And I've outlined a plan as to how we're dealing with that using our own resources, because we can't wait for international help. So we're working together. Thank you.
Vice President, the high professionalism of the C Division of the police force should be commended. I know sometimes the police take a lot of bashing.
Thank you for commending them.
But they do a fantastic job and they should be commended.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. I just realized we're about 3 hours into this.
Good afternoon, Vice President Kimal King. For a while now, I just want to check in on the status with CGX.
CGX, it went to the cabinet today. There were discussions. The cabinet is not inclined to grant the license, a continuation of the license. However, the discussion was not concluded. So there may still be other issues that the cabinet will have to discuss, but it's not inclined to at this point in time.
Okay.
But the discussions continue.
No problem. For Guyana Standard, the U.S. State Department, they put out their report recently on Guyana, and there was a section about corruption. They talked about the local climate with respect to that issue and advised companies coming to Guyana to liaise with watchdog organizations here, and they recommended TIGI, the Local Transparency Institute. So I'm trying to get a sense of how you feel about that organization being recommended, given your comments on
Yeah,
them?
well, that organization is probably the most corrupt organization based on their reports that they sent up before. Misleading deliberately, Transparency International. That is the international organization. They have sent up misleading reports. It's a political organization. And we have noticed a lot of these reports that come out of these agencies. They come out from time to time. They're done routinely, and at the next meeting I can address it in greater detail. I've seen that report, and there are lots of things I wish to maybe speak about on it.